Welcome to the Museum of the San Ramon Valley's virtual speaker series. I am Dan Dunn, the director of the museum. Last month, we learned the history of Mare Island Naval Shipyard and how it contributed to taking the United States Navy from sails and steam to nuclear submarines, and in the process changed the Bay Area and the world. The places that we have lived and visited have influence on how we view the world. Today's presentation, The Geography of Eugene O'Neill, will explore the many intersections between the playwright's geography and his fiction. From Danville, California, to New London, Connecticut, to New York, to Ireland, and to the open sea, they all shaped the man and the plays that changed American theater. Our presenter today, Eric Fraser Hayes, is the artistic director of the Eugene O'Neill Foundation Dow House. Under his leadership, the foundation has become the leading producer of the plays of Eugene O'Neill in the country. Eric has directed 29 of O'Neill's 51 plays, including this September's O'Neill Festival production, A Moon for the Misbegotten, at the Dow House. Last July, he presented his theatrical lecture, Eugene O'Neill, 51 Plays in 51 Minutes, at the Eugene O'Neill International Conference in Boston. His production of O'Neill's Weld It will be featured at this year's Eugene O'Neill International Festival of Theatre in New Ross, Ireland. I would like to add right here that Eric is a friend of mine and a friend of the museum. We have used Eric and his acting troupe many times for museum programs, and he's always willing to put up with a lot of crazy ideas that we come up with. So he's a good friend of ours. Please use the chat window at the bottom of the screen for any questions that you have. Feel free to send in questions at any time during the presentation, and we'll address them at the end. And now it's my great pleasure to welcome into the program Eric Fraser Hayes. Eric?
Hey, thank you, Dan. And hello to everyone. First off, I just want to, because I know I might forget this later, I want to thank Dan and John and Donna and the Museum of the San Ramon Valley for this opportunity to think about these things and find a way to present these ideas that I'm calling the geography of Eugene O'Neill. And in thinking about geography, and Dan touched on this already, I would say I'm thinking about obviously the places. Well, first off, I should say I always come to O'Neill first and foremost thinking about his plays, but then I expand that and I start thinking about his life and how they affected the plays, and even how places affect the inspiration that I feel to create Eugene O'Neill works with the number of artists that I collaborate with to do that. I hope today I have something to offer for everyone, those that know a lot about O'Neill, but then maybe hopefully I can also, people who are new to O'Neill, intrigue them. I think for the most part, what I have to present today is sort of a photo essay of different places connected to O'Neill in one way or another, how they interact with each other, and I think also inform each other. So by the way, this is the first time I've done a presentation where I've shared a screen, so bear with me if I have any technical difficulties, but here we go. Let's see. There. And share. Okay. That's our starting image and our ending image. Come on. All right, hold on. I'm having my issues. There we go. All right. First thing I'd like to say is the idea of connecting Eugene O'Neill with a place and his work, and trying to connect the plays and the place first kind of found a way to me and started to resonate for me in 2019 when we did Long Day's Journey into Night at Dow House, and I found myself it was inescapable that you needed to connect Dow House, where he wrote Long Day's Journey, with the actual play. And so we did that with that production. I tried to give a special emphasis to Eugene O'Neill as a writer, since obviously he was a writer at Dow House, and the young character that is the stand-in for Eugene O'Neill, Edmund Tyrone in Long Day's Journey, is also a burgeoning writer. So I tried to make that connection. The other area I got very interested in was the connection of Eugene O'Neill struggling with his relationship to his older brother, Jamie, or Jim, depending on the play. He references him. He's in at least 4 of the Dow House plays, some very directly and some indirectly. And never more directly than as Jim Tyrone in our current production of A Moon for the Misbegotten. So anyway, 2019, I'm all about the plays and the places. I'm excited. We do that production. We take it to Ireland. We've scheduled a January at the museum, and then the pandemic hit. And I would say one of the silver linings for me of the pandemic was there was almost nowhere to go, but I had a refuge. My refuge was Dow House. And so I started going up to Dow House quite a bit, and I started taking pictures, and I just started thinking about lighting and composition. And just, I found the area to be very dramatic. And obviously it was well suited in a place for inspiration for Eugene O'Neill. Just this is backcountry behind in the Los Trompos area. I'm very interested in contrast, and I recognize this is born of my interest in creating stage pictures when I do a play. But it also became a way that I started taking an inventory of the Dow House area and the area around it. This actually happens to be Elworthy Ranch, but I used this tree in our film of Beyond the Horizon. This is a view from the backside of Dow House, which a lot of times people don't take pictures of. You always see the courtyard. And then, just another picture using the barn. And this one we didn't actually get to use, but this was done for the greening for St. Patrick's Day. But because of the war in Ukraine, it got shelved this year. But I would say that what happened for me was that I started trying to think during the pandemic how to keep producing. And the idea dawned on me that I would start filming projects. And that way I could work with fewer people. We could be very careful about it. We weren't reliant on whether an audience was present or not. And it really was kind of a saving grace that we were able to make this pivot to creating virtual productions and film productions. One other thing I want to talk about Dow House before I get into some of these other things is animals. It's inescapable. There are animals all over the place, whether they're the ground squirrels running around or the birds flying above. But the most constant and noticeable animal are cows. We have cows there all year round practically. And sometimes they actually have worked their way into our films, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But here's just some other animals. We have deer are a constant presence, especially around dusk. They come out when we're rehearsing. Turkeys are there all year round, except for those like that 2 weeks in November where they all disappear for some reason. I wonder why. If you look in the center of this picture, it's a little bit blurry, but there's a coyote there. We see them every once in a while. We definitely hear them at night. They're definitely calling out in the dark, which is kind of eerie. Only thing that's more eerie is listening to the cows do their lowing sound in the dark, which sounds like a dinosaur. Here's just another picture of, I think at the bottom, if you look, there's a giant, I think an egret there. This picture, unfortunately, it's in the distance. You can't see it, but I wanted to just include it because in the middle of the picture there, those are actually wild boar. First time I'd actually ever seen them. I'd seen evidence of them all the time up at Dow House. Sometimes it looks like overnight the whole place has been rototilled, but they were out there in this heat wave last week. And for whatever reason, I guess they came out during the light and I got to see them for the first time. Here's probably our most interesting and dangerous resident up there. We do have rattlesnakes. I don't see them every year. I haven't seen one this year. This picture comes from last year, 2021. This one was sunning itself outside the barn. In our most interesting story, 3 years ago when we were doing Long Day's Journey into Night, we were rehearsing at night, and all of a sudden someone pointed out and said, wait a second, look in the corner of the barn. And there was a rattlesnake watching rehearsal. And we decided to, well, let's just leave it alone. And we left for the night. And the next morning I came back and it was gone. I would say the most harrowing experience with one was there was a rehearsal years ago in which the rattlesnakes got underneath our car, and we were parked at night, and that was kind of a little scary, and we chased it away. And then at the end of rehearsal, it was underneath the car again. And that was a kind of a distressing situation to think that there was a rattlesnake just under your car in the dark waiting for you. Obviously, when you're talking about Dowhouse and plays, you can't. The thing that gives Dowhouse its power is, in my estimation, is the study where he wrote the plays, and all the power emanates out of this room. This is his study. This is where he wrote Long Day's Journey into Night, and The Moon for the Misbegotten, and The Iceman Cometh, and A Touch of the Poet, and Huey, and More Stately Mansions while he was here, and obviously at this desk where he worked. And so I'm always going into this room and thinking of it as a sacred space. And I'm always amused to imagine a school group coming in and learning that Eugene O'Neill smoked Lucky Strikes. This is Rosie's room. I think it's important for a couple ways. You see the player piano was a gift from Carlotta, his wife. I believe it was for his 48th birthday. It was very reminiscent of his early days where he went to a lot of bars and brothels. And I think it served as a source of inspiration for a lot of his late plays, where he was going back in his mind and revisiting his past. And it was, I think, a good cue for that. But I think this is sometimes overlooked. In the same room with the player piano, on the other side of the room is this old radio and a map of Europe. And what it points out is that the O'Neills really very seriously listened to the radio during World War II. They were very interested. They had lived in Europe and they knew people in Europe, and they were keeping track of the war. And one thing that most people don't know is that during this time that Eugene O'Neill lived at Dowhouse, he wrote, or he attempted, I should say, to write 3 plays that touched on the subject of fascism. Now, he never got far enough along with the plays or was satisfied with the plays to keep them. And he had this habit of destroying his plays if he didn't like what he had. So they were destroyed, but he was wrestling. He was listening to this radio. He was keeping track of the war, and he was wrestling with ideas about fascism during his time at Dowhouse in his plays. And I think that's interesting. I include this one shot. This is downtown Danville, and this is Elliot's Bar is there in the middle. It's a little blurry because of the neon there. The significance is a couple of things. One, I believe Elliot's Bar moved to this location in 1912. That is also the year that The Iceman Cometh was set. And I can't help but be amused by the notion of Eugene O'Neill peeking his head into the bar and looking at all the old wood and the stained beer stains and helping feed his imagination as he wrote The Iceman Cometh. There is one story of him having his car parked in front of Elliot's, but everyone I've ever talked to always swears that it wouldn't have been Eugene. It would have been his chauffeur Freeman, or it would have been one of his sons visiting in town. But I'm more amused at the idea that Eugene O'Neill, might have snuck in there for a few minutes and took a look around and maybe had a drink. I would also point out one thing about Elliot's. If there's anytime there's an Irish artist, whether it's a playwright or an actor come to town, this is where they always end up. Somehow this feels more like an Irish pub than anything else we have around here. This moves us on to the East Coast. I made a trip to Boston recently in July. And O'Neill, I know this is Boston Harbor, set sail from Boston Harbor during one of his early years as a sailor, as a young man. And this led me to a trip to New London, Connecticut. And I gotta say, for somebody into O'Neill, New London, Connecticut is like Main Street Disneyland. I felt like there was O'Neill everywhere. There were buildings that were referenced in plays. There were stories about him being chased off properties with shotguns. Even though it's been many years since the O'Neill family lived in New London, this is still, I felt like there were ghosts of O'Neill and his fiction everywhere in this town. This is New London is on the Thames River. And it's I know O'Neill probably learned a bit about the life at sea and also the red light district and sailors and kind of the rough element of the town through his time, along the water here. But one thing I had not known, and because I grew up on the West Coast, is New London has a lot of Revolutionary War history. This is a monument that is across the water in Groton. It is for Fort Griswold. It's to commemorate, or not commemorate, but to honor the memory of the 166 colonial or American soldiers that were massacred by the British. And it was while I was in New London, I learned a lot about what I know now about Benedict Arnold, which actually really amused me, as I found very interesting. I grew up, like many people, know Benedict Arnold. He was Revolutionary War, and he's synonymous with being a traitor. And that's kind of the extent of what I know. And what I found out is kind of his infamy really lives in New London. He had grown up in the area in a village called Norwich. And when the British came, he knew the area, and he knew the lay of the land, and he knew the setup for the fort, and he knew their warning system. And he was very helpful in what ultimately became a massacre of people and the burning of the town. And so he's very infamous there. And in the true spirit of he burned the town, every year the town likes to burn him. And this is a picture of effigy of Benedict Arnold, and below it is my friend Darren Wood, who is an artistic director there in New London, and he's part of this event every year in which they have a parade. I understand it took place just this last week, and they had over 1,000 people participate, and they burn Benedict Arnold in effigy. And I think one of the funniest, or interesting, I should say, things about this whole event is Benedict Arnold was actually a very good general. I didn't know that. He won some wars for the colonists or the Americans before he turned to the British. And so in one of those wars, I believe it was the Battle of Saratoga, he got injured in the leg. And so before they burn him each year, they save his leg as if that's the good part of him. And then after they burn him, they take the remaining leg and they present it to the current mayor of Norwich as a gift. And I found that very macabre, but entertaining. Here, this is me standing in front of Monte Cristo Cottage. This is the place. This is the house where O'Neill lived during the summers. The place that he considered his only home during his childhood. And it is also the setting for Long Day's Journey into Night. And this is, if the study at Dow House is the sacred room, this would be the sacred room at Monte Cristo Cottage. This is the living room. This is where they lived, and obviously, and this is where Long Day's Journey is set. And it's dark, and I think it's suitably dark because even in the play Long Day's Journey, the father James is kind of a miser and doesn't want to make the electric company rich. So he keeps it dark in the play, and they keep it dark now. This is another angle from that room. And the thing I'd point out is the two bookshelves. The one bookshelf kind of represents the father and 19th century drama and theater. Things like Shakespeare, was valued in the 19th century, and history of Ireland, etc. Where the other bookcase features the books that the young Edmund is interested in, or the young Eugene O'Neill was interested in. He was interested in newer thinking, Schopenhauer and Nietzsche, and poets like Swinburne and Dowson and Oscar Wilde were on his shelf. And I think it's also interesting that this is not only the setting for Long Day's Journey into Night, but this is also the setting for the play All Wilderness, the play that is credited as the one comedy that O'Neill created. And in that play also, the young Richard, who's sort of the stand-in for Eugene, he's also talking about how he reads all these books with these ideas, and his family is angry at him because they don't think these are respectable books. This is the staircase at Monte Cristo Cottage, and to me it was very powerful, knowing Long Day's Journey, to think about Mary Tyrone. This is where she would go up the stairs to shoot up with her opium habit. I also think it's interesting, if you look at the top of the stairs, you can see a partial window there. And it's a reflection of the thriftiness or the miserliness of the father, James O'Neill. He put this stairway in and it blocks the window. So aesthetically, it's pretty ugly, but I guess it was the cheapest way to put the stairs in. This is Eugene O'Neill's bedroom, which I thought was interesting and just very simple and sparse. And this is a picture of, this is one of the few archival photos I have in this presentation. This is a picture from around 1900. And this is Eugene O'Neill on the left and his brother, Jim or Jamie, who was about 10 years older than him. And then on the right is his father. And I knew about this picture when I went to Monte Cristo Cottage. So I just kind of made an effort to create a ghost version of it. I didn't quite get it right, but I feel like some of the energy of the original picture is there. And just like probably some of the energy of the O'Neills when they lived there is there. This is a bar called the Dutch Tavern. It was known as the Oak back in the days the O'Neills lived there. And this is definitely one of those divey places that O'Neill and his brother would have hung out at and probably rubbed elbows with the rougher element of New London. This is the smaller of the two buildings you see there is the Thames Club. It is one of the oldest social clubs in the United States. This is the inside of it. And this is a place where the father, James O'Neill, was a member. It's kind of interesting. If you go down into the basement, there's two things that stand out to you. There's a bowling alley, kind of one of those little duck pin bowling alleys is there. And then there is also a series of little ceramic tiles, like 4x4 tiles. And each one has a little silhouette cameo of the profile of every member who's ever been a member of this club, including James O'Neill. And that was pointed out to me, and that was really interesting to me. This is the Crocker House. This is also on that main street in New London. This is a place where, along with the Thames Club, the father, James Tyrone, in Long Day's Journey, would go and make his business deals. And this is one of his favorite places to go drink and make deals for property. And it was also a place that Eugene and his brother Jim would drink as well. This is on a little side street. This was kind of a little bonus. I knew nothing about this, but this is a garage that Father James built, and it's still there. And you can see, although it's partially covered, it's called the Monte Cristo, just like the house they lived in. And this is where, you just, as a person really steeped in O'Neill, get excited when you find out that there are scholars who believe there are the buildings that inspired plays. And in this case, this is one of the buildings that some scholars believe inspired the mansion in Morning Becomes Electra. There's supposed to be this grand Mannon family mansion with these giant columns. Is described in the play, and this house happens to be on a row called Whale Oil Row, which has a series of these houses. And then there are other people in New London who believe this building is the inspiration for the house in Morning Becomes Electra. This is the Shaw Mansion, and this is actually also where the Historical Society is. And in some ways, it's kind of like the parallel to the Museum of the San Ramon Valley. They offer performances sometimes in a very intimate space here. And this place also has the notoriety of being one of those places, like many probably, where George Washington was here, also the Marquis de Lafayette. The building in the center is the Mohegan Hotel, and it was built in 1897. And it is, I think it's significant for a couple of things. It's a kind of representation of what was seen as a potential boom in property, and one of the reasons why the father was so interested in buying property in real life and in the play Long Day's Journey. I also think if you take a look at it for a second, and then you just think Eugene O'Neill, although he had very mixed feelings about New London, when he left Dow House, he moved to San Francisco and he stayed at the Huntington. And I can't help but think there's kind of a parallel between the way the Mohegan in New London looks and the Huntington up on Nob Hill in San Francisco. This is the Hammond Estate. And this is kind of one of those delicious Eugene O'Neill ironic things. When Eugene O'Neill was growing up, this would have been kind of this is a rich person's estate. There was the Harkness estate, the Hammond estate. They kind of are represented in his plays. For instance, in Moon for the Misbegotten, there's a Standard Oil millionaire named Harder, T. Stedman Harder, and he lives on an estate like this. What's ironic about it is now this is the home of the Eugene O'Neill Center, which is a very renowned center for development of new plays. And it's been instrumental in the plays of August Wilson and Lin-Manuel Miranda. among many others. So it's ironic that it's now in O'Neill territory too. This is Harvard. This is one of the quads, and Eugene O'Neill went to Harvard for one semester to study playwriting with George Pierce Baker. And I also think it's a suitable setting for one of his early plays called Abortion, which is about a college athlete, big man on campus who gets a local girl pregnant, and then she dies from complications from an abortion. And in the background of this the scene is a parade of collegians cheering his name, and I can very easily see that parade of college students marching through this quad at Harvard. This is the last picture I have from the East Coast, and it's an archival picture of Circle in a Square in New York. And Circle in a Square is really played an important role in the renaissance of Eugene O'Neill. His last big hit and his last giant bit of notoriety in his lifetime was in the early 30s. And he lived 20 more years, and he kind of was mostly in obscurity, a lot of it, at Dow House. But in the mid 50s, a few years after he died, Circle in the Square decided to revive his play, The Iceman Cometh, with Jason Robards Jr., and it was a big hit. And then later that year, they did the American premiere of Long Day's Journey. And from that point on, Eugene O'Neill was very much in vogue. He won another Pulitzer Prize. He was getting produced all the time. People started taking a look at some of his later plays, and this really established and put the Dow House plays on the map. We now move on to Ireland. This is New Ross, Ireland. This is a street in New Ross, and this is a more narrow street in New Ross. The significance of New Ross is that it is along the River Barrow, which is where a lot of Irish immigrants, they left Ireland to come to America, including young James O'Neill, Eugene O'Neill's father, left from this town. And that is why this is where New Ross, this is why they host the International Eugene O'Neill Festival each year. And not only did the O'Neills come from New Ross, but also the Kennedys. A Kennedy flame is burning in New Ross all the time. And if you look behind the flame there, you can see the mass of a clipper ship. There is a replica of a famine ship called the Dunbrody that is docked there along the river. This is a picture of the St. Michael's Theater. This is where the Eugene O'Neill International Festival takes place. It took place in 2018 and 19 and will again next month in October. This is from 2019. That's the cast of Long Day's Journey in Ireland. And one of the things that's kind of interesting and challenging when we're producing in Ireland is we're used to producing a play up at the barn at Dow House, and it's a very intimate space. No seat in the audience is more than 20 feet from the stage. But when we go to Ireland, we have to resize the play to this very large space. And that's always one of the interesting challenges, but is also part of what makes it exciting about going there, is to kind of reimagine how to tell the story in a different kind of space. I included this. This has no direct connection to O'Neill. This is the tower at St. Anne's Church in Cork. But I think what it has to do with O'Neill is it has to do with his Irish sensibilities. This tower is locally known as the Four Liars, and that's because there is a clock on each side of the tower, and apparently they always tell different times. So no two clocks ever say the same time. And so I kind of think that really kind of touches on the Irish sensibility and the sense of appreciation of irony that you find in Eugene O'Neill's plays. There's sort of a playfulness, and this moves me on to productions during the pandemic. As you can see, we were rehearsing. This is from the Lost Plays, the first project we did in 2020. And we made a big effort to meet outside and keep at distance. We were always working, for safety was a big factor. When we finally presented in the barn, we kept the contact with each other to a minimum. We met 3 times. We would rehearse and stage the first 2 times we met, and on the third rehearsal, we would shoot. And one thing I would just point out in this picture is that we use music stands. I normally don't like using music stands, but I wanted obviously to keep the actors safe, but I also wanted to signal to anyone who viewed these films that we were keeping the actors safe while we made them. This is another attempt to stay safe and be very creative. The National Parks hired me to film a production of O'Neill's early play called Fog. And it's about two men on a lifeboat in the middle of a fog bank in the Arctic. And my conceit here obviously was to keep us outdoors, but I thought if I shot at a very high angle and you just saw the outline of the boat and the actors and just nothing but green around them, you could imagine that they were, lost in this space where they couldn't tell where they were. Ultimately, the wind didn't behave and we had to film. I borrowed, this is inside the barn at Dow House. I borrowed every single paint drop that the 4 local national parks could offer me. And we shot inside because of the wind was not nearly as bad. Here, this is an interesting picture for me and very inspiring. Among the many times I was up at Dow House, I took this picture and I really started to think about those trees as if they were ghost trees. And in some ways, it spawned a series of short films that I've called the Ghosts of Dow House. And the idea is that a character from an O'Neill play comes to life on the grounds. It was a way to tell the story of one of the characters in O'Neill's plays, but also connect it very site specific to Dow House and the grounds around it. And this is the character Ephraim Cabot talking about the farm in Desire Under the Elms. We have Edmund Tyrone from Long Day's Journey swimming in the pool as if he was Eugene O'Neill during his daily swim. We have Lazarus who comes back from the dead in Eugene O'Neill's play Lazarus Laughed. We decided to film that in front of Blemmy's grave at the back of the property. And probably my favorite use of site specific was the character of Yank, who's supposed to be a stoker at the bottom of in the stoke hole at the bottom of a steamship shoveling coal. We used the basement to make that film about that character. And I love the idea that he's just down there in the basement railing against everyone. This is a picture of us shooting early morning. And we had to shoot early morning for multiple projects. This is actually for the full-length film of Beyond the Horizon that we filmed. And I just point out, if you look carefully, you can see some cows in the picture. And we got there very early, and apparently we surprised the cows, but then they got very curious. And one of the cows walked up to our actor who was playing Robert Mayo, who's supposed to be lying on the ground dying. And the cow got so close to him that the actor got scared he was going to get stepped on. I know at one point a cow got so close to the camera, I kind of thought it was going to take a bite out of it. It was kind of an adventure. And if you actually see the film in the last shot, one of the cows did make it into the shot. Fortunately, I don't think he upstages the actors, or the sunrise, but he's there. He should get some residuals. This is just the image we used for Beyond the Horizon. It kind of highlights how well suited this play was to Dow House and its farm-like elements outside and around the property. And I just threw this in because this is one of my favorite pictures that we've done. This is from a 2016 production of The Emperor Jones we did at Dow House. And I'm just kind of proud that if you Google Eugene O'Neill and masks, this picture will always come up as one of the first images that Google will show you. This is a picture of Honduras. Eugene O'Neill went on a mining expedition. This is just an archival picture. He went on a mining expedition in his youth. And there's also his very first play, A Wife for a Life, features some miners. This is a waterfront in Buenos Aires. Eugene O'Neill spent time in Buenos Aires. He got very sick there, but when he wasn't sick, he either was visiting bars or brothels or working at a sewing machine factory. Buenos Aires is also mentioned in his plays. It's mentioned prominently in Beyond the Horizon, and there's also a story in the first produced O'Neill play, Bound East for Cardiff, about a stabbing incident there. And I can't help but think maybe O'Neill knew something about a stabbing incident in Buenos Aires in his real life. This is a really unique picture. This is the house that Eugene and Carlotta lived in Seattle. Very few people know he lived in Seattle for a while. It was before he moved to Dow House. This is courtesy of my friend and scholar, Steve Bloom, who provided it for me. And I think it's not surprising that Eugene O'Neill put himself next to the water up there in Seattle. This is a picture of the museum, our production of Welded from this January. I just wanted to throw it in as just to highlight the special relationship that we have with the museum. We've been producing there since January of 2010. And I really think of it as our laboratory and our space to try out new plays. And I'm excited to say that we tried out Welded this January, and then we're taking it to Ireland later this year, actually next month. Then brings us to A Moon for the Misbegotten. I was really happy that actor Ryan Hayes, who played the brother Jim or Jamie in Long Day's Journey, came back 3 years later to play the same role in our production of Moon. This is a property in New London, and it's probably a likely site for the farm, the Hogan farm that is featured in the play Moon for the Misbegotten. It just kind of shows how inhospitable it was. They complain about how they live on a pile of rocks, and this area definitely has a lot of rocks. This is Blarney Castle, and I think this is an element of the play. I would say Moon for the Misbegotten is Eugene O'Neill's most Irish play, and there's a great deal of Irish sensibility and Irish humor in it, and that really kind of comes from the tradition of Blarney. And I know some people who are watching probably have been to Blarney Castle, and it's a bit of a harrowing thing. I went there a few years ago, and basically you climb to the top. You have to, if you want to kiss the Blarney Stone, you got to climb to the top and then hang backwards off the top of it while some burly man holds your legs. So you try to kiss the Blarney Stone. I know when I did it, I just kissed whatever stone I could and had him pull me back up. But there's a real sense of Blarney and using humor to get through difficult things in A Moon for the Misbegotten, and actually a lot of O'Neill's plays. This is outside of New London. In A Moon for Misbegotten and in Long Day's Journey, there's a reference to an ice pond, and this is a likely site for the ice pond in the New London area. Up at Dow House, this is the pond that I think of as the ice pond. It is right behind the barn up at Dow House. I also think of the connection with this dirt road that comes up to the back of Dow House. The play calls for Jim and Tyrone to walk up a dirt road to get to the farm, and I see this as the kind of road that Eugene O'Neill might have been thinking about as he wrote this play about his brother. And this is the view from Eugene O'Neill's study, and I really like thinking that very much he probably sat at his desk and wrote Moon, looking at that barn and thinking about the Hogan farm, and maybe at night he saw the moonlight on the barn, and I think a lot of that could have served as inspirations for our current play. And this last weekend we opened Moon, and for the first time in 3 years we resumed a tradition that I find very special, and that is when we present in the barn at night, we turn on one light in the house, and it's the light of the study. I like to imagine that the ghost of O'Neill is watching our play, or maybe he's just up there burning the midnight oil, writing himself, what a new play, who knows? But he's up there, his spirit is up there, and I really think that's a special tradition. And then across the field there, in view of that window is our barn where we're presenting a play, in this case, Moon. And then this just happens to be my favorite nighttime picture of the barn. I find it a very magical place and a haunted place, but a place of inspiration to create. And I think most actors that come to Dow House feel the same way. And that's what I have. And thank you. And I turn it over to Dan.
Thanks, Eric. Nice job. And I do love that last slide too. I mean, we used it in the beginning and you used it at the end, and that's a great slide. If you ever make a poster out of anything, there you go.
Okay.
So we do have a couple questions for you. O'Neill apparently didn't like New London, Connecticut, and yet he spent a lot of time there. Why? What was his objection to New London?
Well, I've thought about that, and I kind of feel like it's a mixed thing. I think with everything with Eugene O'Neill, he both loves and hates. He definitely feels very strongly, personally, and then also in his plays, his characters feel very strongly. But I think on the hate side, a lot of painful episodes took place there. And I think a lot of also he ruffled the feathers of a lot of local people. I made one reference to being chased with a shotgun. Apparently, I don't know, who knows? Maybe he was very interested in the ladies, and their fathers were not very interested in him. So it was definitely, and he was drunk a lot, and I think that probably gave him a bad name. Also a little bit. I think there was an element of bigotry there, and it comes out in some of the plays. But this idea that the town was a very well-established sort of Yankee town, and they were Irish, and so I'm sure they had their deal of prejudice to deal with, and felt like they were the underdogs, and so that would create some of his resentment. But I would also say, on the love side, or at least the interest side, it's inescapable. It's where he was from, and it inspired a lot of his work. So I'm sure he had mixed feelings about it.
Well, speaking of resentment, and here's a moral for us all of the story of Benedict Arnold. If you do something bad to people, there'll be some people who will never, ever forget. So just be good to out there.
Dan, can I add one thing about Benedict Arnold I didn't say, which is I learned that at West Point, and Benedict Arnold went to West Point. My understanding is that everyone who's ever become a general has a portrait at West Point. And at West Point, they have a portrait. And it's the Benedict Arnold portrait, but his name is not under it. And it's only a picture of a boot, which is like apparently the good part of him.
Okay, so we had a gentleman named Mike that chimed in on the play Strange Interlude, staged in Quincy, Mass, because apparently it was banned in Boston. And he had said that the production is long. It's 5 hours, and they scheduled a dinner break. And the theater was next to a restaurant owned by a guy named Howard Johnson, who apparently does pretty well in life later on.
Right.
Any comments on that one?
No, I've heard that story. I heard it really put Howard Johnson on the map, so to speak. Was he really piggybacked? He's the ultimate carpetbagger when it came to that production. He really made hay off of that. But yeah, the play itself, I've experienced it once, and it is a real. It's 9 acts, and it's interesting. I think. So even I'm like, I don't know if I want to tackle that one. And I would say, as far as it being banned, obviously it was pretty shocking that the play basically has to do with a woman who is traumatized and then acts out sexually because of it. And then is just such confused relationships with the men in her life. They're her son, they're her lover, they're her father, they're all kinds of things. And I think 1920s was fascinated by that, but a lot of people wanted to censor it also.
Okay, so let's clean this up a little bit. You had a slide of a radio of the Eugene O'Neill's radio, and he lives in that era where a lot of people remember the radio as the golden age of radio and the golden age of film. So what was his view of film? Film to somebody who does theater could be a threat, or it could be an opportunity. So what do you think? Where do you think he fell there?
I think like New London, I think he had mixed feelings. I know that at one point he when his second wife Agnes Bolton, at some point she was going to write for film at some point. This is early 20s or something like that, and he highly discouraged it. He did, thought it was a horrible idea, and yet. He, when he did Beyond the Horizon, his first big hit, I believe he was interested in creating a screenplay for it. And then I'd also say he had no problem cashing checks for when people made film versions of his plays. What I do know about the actual plays that were produced, there was one for Strange Interlude, there was one for Morning Becomes Electra, Emperor Jones, The Hairy Ape. But the only one he actually liked was one that John Ford did, and he did a compilation of several of his short one-act plays about sailors, and he put them together and called it The Long Voyage Home, which is the name of one of those short one-acts. Apparently, that is the one film adaptation that O'Neill actually liked, and it kind of opened his eyes to the possibilities of what film could do.
Okay. And that's it for questions for us. Eric, I need to and want to thank you for the work you put into this and telling the O'Neill story. I think a lot of people really enjoyed it, and I certainly enjoyed talking with you. So thanks for coming on with us. And if here's your chance to plug Moon for the Misbegotten. So go for it.
Thank you. The O'Neill Festival is taking place this month. We have 6 more performances of A Moon for the Misbegotten at Dow House. Fortunately and unfortunately, they're all sold out, which is a wonderful problem to have. But I know that there are some other events downtown for the festival. And if people are interested, they should check out eugeneo'neill.org. And then I just lastly plug the possibility that we will return in January to the museum to do another experiment in O'Neill, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. We'll look forward to seeing you. I'll see you before January, but everybody else should show up in January.
Great, yes. All right.
And I'd like to thank everyone for viewing this morning. If you missed any of our earlier programs, you can find them by visiting the museum's website at museumsrv.org. Eric's program today will appear early next week. What do you know about Lake Merritt? Is it natural? Is it man-made? What role has it played in the history of Oakland? On October the 20th at 11:30, our next program, noted award-winning Oakland historian and author Dennis Edenowski will tell us about the story of Lake Merritt, the history and the story of Lake Merritt, October 20th, Thursday at 11:30. If you like these programs and want them to continue, we ask that you make a donation by going to the museum's homepage, museumsrv.org, and clicking on the Donate Now button. The museum is also in need of volunteers. If you can give us some time, please contact the museum. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation. Again, thanks to Eric. Stay safe, and thank you for watching.